Welcome to the Aversio Experience, the podcast where functional mushrooms meet real life, real science, and real people who are ready to feel better than they ever thought possible. I'm Brandy Garden. I'm the co-founder here at Aversio Wellness, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Dr. Desiree Caruso, naturopathic physician.
Hi, everyone. Mushrooms are symbols of interconnectedness. And every episode, we are here to connect you with the health, the wisdom, and the science that fungi have brought us on our own journey to this moment. We believe functional mushrooms are critical to the maintenance of our physical well-being, our mental clarity, and our collective vitality. These organisms have sustained life on this planet for hundreds of millions of years. And it turns out they have a lot to offer us too.
Yes, and our ancestors knew this. They had deep, intuitive, cultural connections to mushrooms long before modern science caught up. And yet today, in a world where we should know better, fungi remain understudied, undervalued, and wildly misunderstood. And that is exactly why we're here, because Aversio means change, and it's our mission to change lives through fungi.
There's a mushroom for every moment.
And we're so glad that you are here to share this one with us. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Aversio Experience, everyone. I am Brandy Garden. I'm the co-founder here at Aversio Wellness.
And I'm Dr. Desiree Caruso, naturopathic physician. This is part 3, the final episode in our skin series.
Yes, we started with psoriasis and chaga. That was my jam. And then we did eczema and reishi. That was all for you, Dr. Des. Today, we're closing it out with acne. Like, we can't do a skin series without acne. I have a few people very close to me in my life. I was just talking to you about Dr. Des who are going to love this episode. So this is for you. And today is just really the return to reishi, right? It's actually back for a return appearance this time. It's not another mushroom. So we've talked about chaga, we've talked about reishi, and we're bringing it all back home to a very different way to look at it.
And it's for fascinating reasons too, which we will get into.
Okay. So let's set the scene one more time. So this time I want you to picture a teenager, and we all were one at one time, standing in front of a mirror, probably before school, doing the thing where you kind of tilt your head and you try to angle the light so that the breakout looks less obvious than it actually is. And then picture an adult, probably someone in their 30s, someone who thought that they'd aged out of this years ago, noticing those same 3 spots on their jawline, just showing up like clockwork, always around the same time of the month. You know what I mean? And now picture someone who has tried every cleanser, every serum, every acne safe label on every product in their bathroom, and they still can't figure out why nothing quite works for them.
And if any of that sounds familiar, this episode is for you. And I do want to start with something that surprises a lot of people. Acne isn't just one thing. So it's useful to think of it as several different conditions that happen to look similar on the surface.
I love that. Walk us through it, Dr. Des.
Okay, so in dermatology, they generally separate acne into a few categories. So there's comedonal acne, which is the non-inflamed kind. So you can think of blackheads and whiteheads, and these are caused by clogged pores without much redness or swelling. Then there's inflammatory acne, which has the red, tender papules and pustules filled with pus where the immune system has gotten involved there. Then there's the nodulocystic acne, and that's more severe. So think deep, painful nodules and cysts, and they sit further down under the skin, and they carry this real risk of scarring, actually. And then there is hormonal acne, which isn't a separate lesion type exactly, but it has this distinct pattern and cause that can show up as any of the above.
Yeah. And hormonal acne is going to be the one we're spending the most time on today because of you in our audience, and where most of us all are probably experiencing something like this.
Yeah, it is. And because it's also one of the most ones, and it's also the one that most adults dealing with unexpected breakouts are actually experiencing. And keep in mind that there are a bunch of other reasons that can be a cause for acne, but we're going to talk about hormonal acne first. So before we do get there, I do want to flag one more category, because this isn't technically acne at all, and it trips up a lot of people. It's called melasthesia folliculitis, though most people know it by its social media name, fungal acne as well.
Whoa. I love a new word. That's what I've never heard before. I don't even really understand what it means. So dive into that for us.
Yeah, so it's caused by an overgrowth of a yeast, Malassezia, that normally lives harmlessly on our skin. And under certain conditions like sweat or humidity, tight clothing, even certain antibiotics, it can overgrow inside hair follicles and produce small, uniform, intensely itchy bumps that look a lot like acne, but respond to completely different treatments. There was this one study that found that among patients clinically diagnosed with regular acne, close to 29% actually have this fungal condition, either alongside or instead of true acne vulgaris.
Wow, that's a huge number of people that are potentially being treated for totally the wrong thing out there.
It really is. And that itch is the biggest tell. True acne vulgaris isn't itchy typically. If breakouts are intensely itchy, they're uniform in size and not responding to standard acne products, then it might be worth exploring with a practitioner as a specific possibility because, antifungal treatment, not acne treatment, is what actually resolves this particular condition.
Wow, so good to flag since nothing that we're about to cover today would touch that condition at all.
Yeah, totally. So this episode is specifically about true acne vulgaris and its hormonal patterns. So hormonal acne has a recognizable signature. It typically concentrates along the jawline, along the chin, and along the lower face. And it tends to flare in a cycle. It's often 7 to 10 days prior to menstruation for people who are cycling. And these lesions tend to be deeper and more tender than a typical teenage breakout. And it's because they're forming further down in the skin.
Why there specifically? Why the jawline?
It's interesting. So the sebaceous glands along the jawline and along the chin have a much higher density of androgen receptors than glands on the foreheads or on the cheeks. And in some estimates, it's even like 2 to 5 times higher.
Wow.
So the same hormonal fluctuation that barely registers on your forehead can trigger a real breakout right along your jaw because that's where the tissue is built to respond most strongly.
Wow. Okay. So let's get into, what I'm going to ask. I want to know the actual mechanism of action because I know this is where it's going to get good.
Okay. So acne overall comes down to 4 interacting factors. So excess sebum production, which is a buildup of dead skin cells inside the follicle called hyperkeratinization, and colonization by a bacterium called Cutibacterium acnes, which lives on everyone's skin, but it can overgrow in the right conditions and inflammation layered on top of all of it. Hormonal acne is really a story about the first factor, sebum, and specifically what is driving it.
Which is androgens?
Yeah. So testosterone circulates in the body and gets converted right at the level of the skin into a much more potent hormone called dihydrotestosterone or DHT, which we've talked about before in other episodes. And that's by an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase. So what happens is DHT binds to androgen receptors far more strongly than testosterone does. And when it does bind to receptors in these sebaceous glands, it tells that gland to produce more sebum. More sebum means more raw material for clogged pores and more food for this particular strain of bacteria, and then more inflammation.
So someone can have completely normal blood testosterone levels and still get hormonal acne.
And I think that's what trips up a lot of people as well. So what matters more in many cases is how much 5-alpha reductase activity is happening locally in the skin itself, converting testosterone to DHT right at the follicle. So your blood work could look perfectly normal while your skin is still producing DHT at a higher local rate. And this is why conditions like PCOS or now PMOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which involves elevated androgens, that's a big piece of the puzzle there, show up as a common underlying driver in 20 to 30% of people with hormonal acne patterns.
Wow, that is such an important distinction because I think that people hear hormonal acne, it's all over social media. We hear it, we hear it, we
Right.
hear it. And I think we just assume that it means that our hormones are abnormal and would show up that way on a lab test. And you're always telling us like normal on a lab test is not always someone else's definition of normal.
Exactly, right? We have to treat the person in front of us, and what the levels that might be optimal for you could be totally different for me, right? So it can just as easily mean that hormones being processed more efficiently into a more potent form right where it matters, right? So that's the individualized piece that people get tripped up on, because it doesn't matter necessarily what our labs show. And sometimes it is very clear and it's evident, oh, your markers are out of range and it's pointing to something, right?
Yeah.
So it's nuanced for sure.
Okay, what about the other two factors that you mentioned? So the bacteria and the here it is again, the inflammation. How do those fit into the hormonal picture specifically?
Great question, because they don't operate in isolation from the sebum piece. So this bacterial species, the C. acnes, feeds on the lipids, so the fats in sebum. So more sebum production directly means more fuel for that bacterial population to expand. So as it expands, it's producing enzymes that break down sebum into free fatty acids, which can be irritating to the follicle wall and provoke an immune response. And that immune response releases inflammatory cytokines, things like interleukin 1 alpha and interleukin 6, which is what turns a simple clogged pore into this red, tender, inflamed lesion. So the hormonal driver at the top of the chain sets off a cascade through all three of the other factors.
It's the same story we keep seeing in this whole series, the psoriasis, the eczema. One upstream trigger, and then everything downstream compounds on top of it.
Yeah, exactly that same pattern, just with different molecules each time. And I think the important thing that we should probably be clear about before we go further is conventional dermatology has effective tools for acne like retinoids, benzoyl peroxide, oral antibiotics for really severe cases, and anti-androgenic medications like spironolactone, specifically for the hormonal pattern that we've been describing. So just keep in mind that these aren't meant to replace those options and what's best for you, because sometimes, working on a slower, more gradual approach to optimize hormones and support the mechanisms that we've talked about can be helpful, and sometimes it's not. So this conversation, I would say, lives alongside dermatological care. And there are many other treatments that dermatologists or even naturopathic physicians who have a skin focus in their practice will share, things like specifically maybe avoiding dairy. That's a big thing that I see in practice because it's inflammatory, and especially for those who maybe are sensitive to that. Just as an example, to know that it's not the end all be all, but it's really supplementing and supporting other things that you're doing.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And gluten's another one. I've had friends who it's not going to behave that way for everyone. But if you are being prescribed something I lived it. I lived on the prescription train. I get it. It works while it works and you get to get on with your life. But if it's not addressing the root cause and you don't want to take that forever, it's worth looking at food every single time. And dairy and gluten are two that are they're easy to eliminate for a short time and see. It might be 30 days, but you will see if it makes a difference or it doesn't. And it's just such a simple thing to do. It's always going to come back to the gut, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so can we talk about how much this actually affects people? Because I don't think acne gets taken seriously enough as something with real psychological weight. And I actually talk about this in my book because in that first chapter, I talk about having a psoriasis lesion right between my eyes. And I didn't know it was psoriasis in the very beginning. I actually thought, when I woke up, do I have a big zit here? And I just wanted to cover it because I was going to be in a fashion show that evening. And I felt more sad than I think I ever have in my life, to be honest. And my dad was the one who came and took me seriously at that time because he could see I was not myself. I'm a very lighthearted, loving, vivacious, happy human. And
Mhm.
just this one little thing on my face when I looked at myself in the mirror caused me to have an emotional experience that made me not feel like me. And I think we don't want to dismiss that psychological weight.
Yeah, no, we don't. And the research supports that too. There's this frequently cited review, and they found that people with acne showed greater impairment in mental health scores than people living with, other conditions like diabetes or back pain,
Hmm.
arthritis, even epilepsy. And multiple studies have found clinically significant depression in roughly 18 to 29% of people with acne, and
Wow.
anxiety in anywhere from 30 to 40%, with
Yeah.
some studies reporting even, some active ideations in a meaningful minority. So it's something that can't be overlooked, and it's public facing, right? You
Yeah.
can't hide it.
Yeah, those numbers are hard to hear. That we still are living in a world where people are putting so much weight to the point of suicidal ideation because of the way that they look. Like it just tells us how much work we have to do as humans to get beyond the thoughts that we are thinking when we do look in the mirror like that. Like this is a health condition. And like you're saying, people can have what would be considered more serious health conditions, diabetes, coronary heart disease, arthritis, and not be impacted emotionally because we don't see it or we don't judge ourselves when we see it. This is such a huge, huge thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And the psychological impact doesn't necessarily track cleanly with the clinical severity,
Mhm.
right? Someone with what maybe a dermatologist would call mild acne can carry just as much distress as someone with a more visibly severe case.
Mhm.
So it's one of the condition where how it feels to live with it matters just as much as how it looks on a grading scale. And I think this is such a great reminder that you just shared is the work that we have to do, and what it's bringing up for us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I love that there are nutritionists out there that will talk about a protocol for acne that includes emotional well being today.
Yeah.
Like this
Hmm.
piece can't be ignored in, I'm going to say, most diagnoses, most illnesses. There's going to be an emotional well-being there's going to be an emotional well-being piece to it. And I love that it's being recognized and that we're talking about it here. So let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to my favorite part where reishi comes in, because you teased this at the top of the episode that this is a genuinely interesting story, and I'm so ready for it. Give us the good news.
Okay, so it is. And it connects directly back to that 5 alpha reductase enzyme that we just talked about. There is a body of published research going back about 2 decades on Ganoderma lucidum, so reishi, triterpenoids, and their effect on that exact enzyme.
Wait. The same enzyme that converts testosterone to DHT?
The very
Okay.
same one, which is cool. So researchers isolated specific compounds from reishi's fruiting body, including one called ganoderic acid DM and another called ganoderyl B, and they tested them directly against both major forms of 5-alpha reductase in lab assays. And both compounds showed measurable inhibitory activity. So in a
Wow.
related study, the ethanol extract, so the alcohol extract of reishi, was also tested in a rat model too, where it suppressed prostate growth induced by testosterone, but
Hmm.
not growth induced by DHT directly, which is a meaningful detail that they mention. It tells you the extract was acting upstream, blocking the conversion step itself rather than blocking the actual hormone after it was already formed.
Wow. So it's not like a generic hormone balancer, which we hear on so many supplement labels. It's targeting the specific conversion step that turns testosterone into this more potent form.
Yeah, that's exactly the mechanism. So I do want to be specific about what the research is too. So these are enzyme assay studies and an animal model of prostate growth, which you might think, why are we talking about prostate growth when this is an acne episode?
Yeah.
But it's that same androgen pathway that's relevant to acne, since both conditions come down to that 5 alpha reductase converting testosterone to DHT. in androgen sensitive tissue.
Hmm.
So the thing to keep in mind is that the mechanism identified is precisely the one that's driving hormonal acne, and it's tested against the exact enzyme responsible. And we've seen this, like people in our community who have really bad cystic acne that's hormonal in nature, and it's alleviated.
Yes. Yes. And this is on top of everything we've already covered last episode. The mast cell and histamine work, the broader anti-inflammatory triterpene research, like it's all coming together.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why reishi is showing up twice in this skin series, because between the anti-inflammatory action that's relevant to that specific acne strain and the inflammation side of acne, and then this specific 5-alpha reductase research that's relevant to the hormonal driver, you do have a mushroom that's addressing 2 of the 4 pathogenic factors that we described earlier, the sebum production and inflammation, through 2 distinct, well-documented mechanisms.
It's like, it's so interesting that patients with hormonal acne are, easy to identify by looking at this jawline pattern. And then we can go, okay, it's not your skincare. It might not be your gut health. Like all the things that we hear about, like just do these 5 things and your acne will be gone, is not recognizing which type it is. But if we can get down to the being able to look in the mirror and get a clue about what it might be and get to that, it's on my jawline. It's maybe it's not the gut. It's not my detox pathways that aren't open, because so often it can be a liver thing. My emotional well-being's been managed. I'm using decent skincare, because I have a teenager and she has been prone to think more products will be better. But if we've managed, we've simplified all of the things, but it's right here, then I know a hormonal acne strategy could be this helpful thing that I didn't think of before. So I have to ask, because we've done this in every episode. Take us back to the gut. We can't get rid of it. And you mentioned it before, because I love all that mechanism of action, but so often what you're talking about will have a connection to the gut piece.
And it's important too, like just what you said now, that it's typically multifactorial, where you're supporting the liver detox pathways, you're supporting the gut, and you're also supporting the other pathway with DHT. But when we think about acne, it has one of the most mechanistically clear gut connections of anything we've covered in this series, because it can run through a very specific, well-mapped pathway involving insulin and a hormone called insulin-like growth factor, or IGF-1.
Fun. Break that down. All right, everyone, we're taking a little break from the episode because there's something I don't talk about as much as I should, but chaga has definitely changed my day-to-day life lately. I have dealt with joint inflammation from psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis on my skin for years, and chaga is this one thing that I've added that I actually notice it in my body.
And it makes sense why. Chaga has one of the highest antioxidant values of any natural substance ever measured. What that means practically is it works upstream, reducing the oxidative stress that feeds chronic low-grade inflammation before it has the chance to cascade into symptoms like joint discomfort or skin flare-ups.
And here's the part that really changed things for me. When your body isn't spending so much energy constantly fighting inflammation in the background, you turns out have more energy left over for everything else you want to do in your life. And I didn't expect chaga to affect my energy. I was taking it because I'd read the research about what it could do for my skin and for my joints. But less internal fighting just means more of you left over to actually show up in your day.
That is a real and reasonable connection. Inflammation is metabolically expensive. The immune system running hot all day, every day, is a cost that your body pays somewhere. And a lot of people never connect their fatigue back to that.
So many people in our community tell us the same thing. Less joint stiffness, calmer skin, and more energy that they expected walking in.
So here's the key. Chaga's heavy-hitting antioxidant compounds are alcohol-soluble, not water-soluble, which is why it's an 8-to-1 dual extract, hot water and alcohol from the whole fruiting body. One capsule delivers 3,600 milligrams quantity crude equivalent, a real clinically relevant dose, not a token amount.
And that's the highest amount that Health Canada will let us consume in a day. So you are getting everything you need in that one capsule. So if you are dealing with joint discomfort of any kind, skin that flares more than you'd like it to, or you just feel like your body is working overtime for no clear reason, then chaga is worth trying.
And give it a few weeks of consistent use. This works on the terrain, the entire system, not just the symptom. So it's cumulative, not instant.
You can head on over to eversiowellness.com. That's EVERSIO wellness.com. And please use code podcast15 to save yourself 15% off of any order anytime. That is podcast15.
There's a mushroom for every moment. For a lot of people, this is the one working quietly in the background of all the others. Now, let's get back to the show. So a high glycemic diet, meaning lots of refined carbohydrates and sugar, will spike blood glucose, which raises insulin and it raises IGF-1 levels. Now, IGF-1 directly stimulates the same sebaceous glands that we've been talking about, including increased sebum, and it activates a cellular growth pathway called mTORC1, which drives increased skin cell proliferation and sebaceous gland activity. This is well documented enough that it's become a treatment consideration. There was a study by K-Mac and colleagues, and they found 0 cases of acne among a group of adolescents and adults following a low glycemic index diet, compared to a meaningfully higher rate in a standard diet comparison group.
Fascinating. And the gut microbiome specifically fits into that. How? Give it to us.
Okay, so diet doesn't just spike insulin directly, but it also reshapes the gut microbiome. So an unhealthy gut environment appears to worsen insulin resistance, which can amplify that same IGF-1 signal. There was a specific pilot study where they examined participants over 12 weeks, and they looked at this particular Lactobacillus rhamnosus strain, which reduced IGF-1 expression and oxidative stress markers in participants, both of which already were directly relevant to the acne pathway that we just described.
So that same insulin and IGF-1 story that shows up in a dermatology textbook, I guess, will also show up in gut health research. So it's genuinely the same mechanism, but from 2 different directions. Like it's almost like everything's connected.
It's like everything's connected. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think that's why we keep coming back to the gut in every single one of these episodes. These systems aren't separate. We just used to study them that way. And now I think it's becoming more well adopted to understand that the skin is a reflection of the internal environment. Our external is a reflection of our internal environment in everything.
Yes, I love it. Is there anything practical, I'm going to say, that someone can take from the gut piece alone, separate from mushrooms? Because I'm just going to why would we not just put reishi in our body every day? Which system have we not talked about to now? And I love that we've brought it to skin because, I think we've missed it being so this obvious thing that everybody gets up and looks in a mirror. Like who doesn't do that? And it's this thing that we might not think about mushrooms and skin, but is there anything else that is this practical takeaway separate from any mushroom?
Yeah, totally. And I would say put these practices into place before adding in a wide variety of supplements. We know that the boring basics, even as unsexy as they are successful, right?
Yes.
So lowering glycemic load, meaning fewer refined carbohydrates and sugary foods, that has, direct published support for acne specifically and independent of anything else we've discussed today. And it's one of the few dietary interventions for a skin condition where the mechanism is clearly mapped out from the food to the insulin spike, to the IGF-1 rise, to the sebaceous gland response. That's a straight line that you can actually see on paper, fewer refined carbohydrates, less sugary foods, eating a diet consisting of whole foods is the best.
Yes. And it's not just going to help your skin. That little piece of advice. I love that you call it the boring basics. Just do it, people. Just think about, and it's summertime while we're recording this. I'm up at the lake. There are more refined carbohydrates around. My husband loves a cinnamon bun. We're playing a lot of cards at night. We don't have a TV here, so entertainment is often around some type of game or social activity, and the treats will come out and be shared. And we're not saying don't do it, but if you've got something you're working on. It's just worth being mindful about what's going into the gut that might come out on the skin. And it's not like the jube is coming out on your skin. Now you don't have an excuse. You know the science of what that upstream trigger is that might come down. So without guilt, enjoy the jube or two, but make sure that you had a good amount of fiber that day, and that's how I'm living up here. I'm not saying no to those things, but I know there's 9 grams of fiber in a pear. And I'm making sure that I am having a bowel movement every single day, that my detox pathways are open, that I'm drinking more than enough water. And I have you, Dr. Desiree, to say, drink your water when we're in meetings online. But, it is those boring basics that allow us to have the joy that we can have from life and not have to worry about being broken out the next morning or a month later when things catch up with us. So I just love that this piece comes down to, yes, take the reishi because it's going to help you with your sleep and it's going to help you with nervous system regulation and stress resilience. And it's going to help with, incredible immune system strength. But this is just one more thing it's doing for you that you might not know. And I mean, you can look at us. My skin is better at 50 years old than it was at 30 years old. And is it because of mushrooms? I never took it for skin, but I love my skin today. And I did not love my skin for decades. So it's one of those great side effects. That's a positive side effect to everything else because mushrooms are food. And we come back to it over and over and over. It's not a supplement, right? You are not reishi deficient. We don't put enough mushrooms on our plate and our culture, and having reishi come to us in a capsule feels like a supplement, but it's actually just food that's helping all of these upstream things. So I'm going to get even nerdier and ask you to bring chaga in, because as I sit here recording with my mushroom matcha that has a lot of chaga in it this morning, I'm doing that because it's summer and I've read the research, but I'd love for you to tell us how chaga fits into this episode.
Yeah, chaga is more of a secondary piece, right? It's more supportive rather than central, like how reishi is. Acne, like the other 2 conditions we've covered in this series, involves measurable oxidative stress. And research has found that an imbalance between oxidants and antioxidants, specifically in acne patients, contributes to that inflammatory piece on that 4-factor picture that we described earlier.
And chaga's whole reputation is built on antioxidant capacity.
Yeah, totally, right? So, and there's also this second thread as well. So if you remember from our psoriasis episode, chaga's extracts have been shown to influence cytokine release for macrophages. These are the immune cells that respond to threats like bacterial overgrowth. And since this particular acne strain, C. acnes, triggers exactly the kind of macrophage and inflammatory cytokine response, calming that same general inflammatory signaling is at least mechanistically plausible here too, even though it hasn't been directly tested in acne in the way that it has in other inflammatory contexts, but it can help with that inflammation piece and the antioxidant piece to support acne.
Yeah, I wish we were bazillionaires and we could just run all of the tests. I wish we could run all of the trials and do the research so that we could come on here and say, there's this incredible clinical trial and we see it. And we know there's a reason there's not. There's a reason that Dr. Desiree is digging for the research that's there, but it is always hopeful that there would be, larger clinical trials on humans. And there's one reason there isn't, and it's money. Clinical trials are expensive and there's not a lot of gain to be had by the people paying for them when they realize things like chaga growing on a birch tree and reishi growing on a log in the forest have such powerful benefits, because nobody's going to patent those compounds because Mother Nature owns that, which means nobody in the pharmaceutical industry is going to benefit from thousands of dollars a month for people to be getting these things. And it's sad, but it's also empowering to know the story we've been told about what we need might not be the truth. So I love it's not chaga targeting that hormone piece at all. It's sitting further downstream on the inflammation side, but it's still what we think is part of the story. And one day, some angel out there is going to run a trial to show us what we already know will be the answer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why it's reasonable, even though it's a secondary impact on acne. It's not targeting the androgen or 5-alpha reductase piece that the way reishi is. It's the supporting player for the oxidative stress and general inflammatory layer. And when our body is not spending time fighting itself or fighting inflammation, it has the energy to be in balance.
Yes.
And that's what I love about functional mushrooms in general, is the modulation piece, is that it's really helping your body restore itself and come back into homeostasis, to equilibrium. And so who can't use some chaga for antioxidant support when we are faced with environmental things that impact us? And I love how chaga is protective of that, especially in the summer months when we're exposed to more sun rays, right? So
Yeah, it's always the one. I know Lori, who we work with as well, our friend Joy McCarthy, puts chaga in her body butter, knowing like there's a reason people who love health and wellness are using certain mushrooms at certain times of the year. And chaga and reishi are going to be those skin ones. So if someone wanted to use both, is there a way to think about that picture?
Yeah, some people do pair them. Reishi for that hormonal and inflammatory mechanism. Chaga is that additional antioxidant support. But if somebody was really only going to focus on one for acne specifically, I would say reishi. It's the one with the more direct mechanism-specific research behind it, especially for hormonal acne. It's probably going to be your best bet.
Okay. And the extraction principle is the same as everything else we've covered?
Yeah, so it's identical. So reishi's ganoderic acids, which are the exact compounds behind that 5-alpha reductase research, are alcohol soluble. So a water-only extract will miss most of them. So that's why it was so important for us to have a dual extract. And as an ND, when I see that there are specific functional mushrooms that are dual extracted, that means that we are going to get those triterpenes present and in a meaningful amount, not just the beta glucans. We love the beta glucans. They're amazing, but the triterpenes are worth having in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we test and test and test. Just take all our money, labs. Just take it all. We want to know that they're there, right? We're not taking mushrooms because we love the taste. We're taking them because we want the compounds to be scientifically verified and delivered into our cells. So if someone is listening out there, wants to actually do something with this episode, that person that's not just going to listen and click to the next one, but they're take action. What's the takeaway for them?
A few things. Okay, so first, it's important to figure out which category your acne actually fits in, right? If it's comedonal, inflammatory, nodulocystic, if it's a hormonal pattern along the jawline with a cyclical rhythm, because the right approach will, differ for each of those. Second, if the pattern sounds hormonal, know that normal blood work doesn't necessarily rule it out, because so much of this happens locally in the skin itself, and there can be suboptimal lab levels. You might be within normal range, but that's just taking an average of the population, and it doesn't mean that it's best for you. Third, diet matters directly, and then more than almost anything else that we've covered in this series. A lower glycemic approach with real food, whole foods, less processed foods has real published support. And then fourth, if you are exploring reishi for this specifically, look for the same thing that we've mentioned all three series: whole fruiting body, dual extraction, verified beta glucans and verified compounds, beta glucans, triterpenes, looking on the label, USDA organic certified, grown on wood, because that's, part of what really does the work and gives you a high quality functional mushroom.
Yeah, don't waste your money. Don't waste your money. If you're going to use this as your medicine, and food is medicine, just go for the good stuff in the beginning and then be consistent. Right. And I think, Dr. Desiree, you mentioned in the beginning, this research that has been done has not been done over the course of 2 or 3 days or a week or even a month. We are looking for these benefits to compound over time. And let's be realistic. The acne did not show up all at once. It probably was a little bit and then got worse and then noticed it cyclically. And this has been going on for months. And it could take us, especially if we're trying to repair something at the level of the gut, it could take a month. It could take 2 months to start to notice it. So we have to be consistent. So consistent advice, 3 episodes in a row. So that brings us to the end of this skin series. Psoriasis and chaga, eczema and reishi, and now acne with a bit of reishi and some chaga on the side in this supporting role.
Three very different conditions. And I hope what came through across all three is that skin conditions are never really just about the skin. There's always a system underneath doing the talking. Psoriasis was an immune system running hot on one specific pathway. Eczema was a barrier problem with its own separate immune circuit entirely. And then acne, what we talked about with acne, is a hormone conversation story playing out at the level of a single enzyme in a single gland on a single part of your face.
Yeah, three completely different mechanisms, and yet the same underlying lesson every time.
And that's what the skin is downstream. It's the last place that these stories show up. It's not the first. So if there's one thing I'd want someone to leave this whole series with, it's permission to be curious about the why underneath a skin condition, rather than only ever treating what's visible on the surface.
It's not more skincare. I mean, it's part of it, but often simplifying is the thing. On the practical side, across all three of these episodes, the through line for what to actually buy has stayed the same. If you are going to say, okay, I am able to do some of those boring basics, I know I'm like, be honest, right? Be honest. Are you getting to bed? Are you sleeping? Are you moving? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating a whole food diet? Are you getting enough fiber? Are you having a regular bowel movement? Those things have to come first. We're never going to break away from that. But if you're someone who's like, I'm doing those things and I'm noticing something, is a reishi capsule going to be the thing that puts me over for the edge? Remember, it has to be whole fruiting body. You want real dual extraction. It has to say that on the label. You want verified compounds on that label. It doesn't matter which mushroom we're talking about, and whichever brand you're going to buy, make sure that the person creating it is being thoughtful about what your body needs in order to see what you deserve to see.
Yeah, that part never changes no matter what condition or which mushroom is doing the work.
Yeah. Okay, if this series changed how you think about your own skin, or maybe gave you some language, we always get such good language from you, Dr. Desiree. You're building my vocabulary every day. Maybe it's giving you that new vocabulary to finally describe what's actually happening in the mirror. And now you can talk to whoever is on your wellness team to help support you. And that's exactly what we hoped for.
Be patient with your skin because it is telling you something. Be well, everyone.
Be well, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today and for giving us this time with you. We hope that something in the episode landed, whether that's a new perspective, a piece of research that you hadn't heard before, or just a reminder that your health is worth taking seriously. And if someone in your life could benefit from what we talked about today, then please share this episode with them. That is genuinely how we grow. One conversation, one person at a time.
And if you're ready to bring functional mushrooms into your daily routine, we would love to support that. Head to aversiawellness.com and use the code podcast15 at checkout. It is our way of saying thank you for being a part of this community, and it saves you 15% on your order. And if you are not sure where to start, that's okay, because we have a mushroom wellness quiz on our website that will point you in exactly the right direction.
And if you haven't yet left us a rating and a review or subscribed to the podcast or followed us on social media, all of the links for that are in our show notes. And we would so appreciate your support there. It just helps us reach more people who need to hear this work. Thank you so much for sharing this moment with us.
Until next time, be well.